In the 1930s, many of the Innisfail Indigenous people moved out to Marulian when the church was built there, including Granny Edwards, her husband Jack, and their 10 children.
Although he never became a Christian at that time, but he made sure his children went to church. He would help the church in the building progress and in every other kind of way. He did bring up his children very, very strictly. And that's where the children went to school, as well as having church out there. And there was a beautiful move of the Lord, even out at Marulian.
The old Mum Edward, she was a great lady. And I think if it wasn't for her, how would you say that? That she made us to be stable in God. She sort of been the backbone of the church. And she used to teach us the ways of God.
After their time on the tablelands around Pinnacle Pocket during the war, the Edwards clan moved to the mouth of the Johnson River, opposite Nins Creek.
I remember as a boy many times going fishing with my parents, or whether it was uncles or aunties in the boat. There was they'd always talk about church, and they'd always talk about those early years of God moving in Nins Creek, but also in the township there of Innisfail. Pastor Laurie and Auntie Mary at that time were our first Sunday school teachers, and our grandmother had a house there, and all around that house, you know, like the next door neighbours, it was like all of our families lived in the next door, and they all owned their own blocks of land at that time, and there was the community there, and our grandmother's little shed at the back. It was just a tin shed with a dirt floor, but that was our Sunday school. And so that little shed in the backyard was packed every, when I say every week, it was almost every day. I just think about the blessing of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, you know, in ministry. When I think about Pinnacle Pocket, when I think about my hometown of Innisfail and all the ministries that have come out of our grandmother, you know, not just myself. I have a cousin who is Pastor Anthony Edwards, who is the pastor now of the Innisfail Church, along with his wife Selena. Other cousins, the Ramsey family, who are in ministry today, doing things. They've pioneered work along with their parents.
As a teenager, Tim went off with the crowd into drugs and other illegal activities. The church had got to a rather low point with only 2 or 3 families. Tim's parents would come home and talk about the prayer meetings that they'd started. They would drive around in their car and pray in the town and the district, and God showed up and answered their prayers. And suddenly many people were filled with the Spirit, not just the Indigenous people, but business people, dentists, electricians, real estate, the mayor even. Then Tim's mother died suddenly when he was just 19 in 1978.
It devastated me, because she was, you know, a mother's prayer. How I got out of car crashes, how some people had shot at us, and many other incidents. Not long after that, I woke up on a tennis court after a wild night out, and I heard like a voice inside of me saying, "Come on, Tim, you've seen everything you wanted to see. You did everything you wanted to do. Give Jesus a go. Give Jesus a chance in your life."
Tim said yes to Jesus, and God started to move in his life. He also started to see many of the Innisfail people moving out in ministry to other parts of Queensland and across the top end. Tim decided to go fruit picking for a season with his brothers in Victoria.
That's where I met my wife, Di. They're picking fruit outside of Mildura.
They married and had 2 daughters while working in the extreme heat in the vineyards. Then one day their 2-year-old daughter collapsed in the heat and Tim screamed out to God.
For me, that was that point of saying, Lord, I'll do anything for you. I'll go anywhere for you. I'll give you my life. And in that prayer and crying and pouring water over this little girl, she began to breathe and cough, and there we really prayed. We really prayed together as a couple for a job that we wouldn't have to work in the heat of the day anymore.
Over the next 25 years, God gave Tim and Di a wide variety of training and ministry. Time in Canberra working in sound archives at the Australian Institute of Aboriginal Studies, time in Tamworth with university studies and work in drug counselling, time as pastors of Babinda Church, North Queensland, establishing a youth campsite for at-risk Indigenous youth in the rainforest at Mission Beach, helping pioneer a residential kinder to Year 12 school in Cairns for children from Indigenous communities from all over Australia and PNG, travelling the nation with the school children and meeting with the Prime Minister and the Governor-General, pioneering worship events, Praise Corroboree in the Great Hall of Parliament House, Canberra, and World of Worship in Cairns.
Worship is my heart, my life. Still lead worship today. I love worshiping the Lord for years and years, and still now I still see worship as a strength within our Indigenous churches across Australia.
Tim and Di wanted to hold a worship event in Cairns for people from remote communities, and they linked up with Hillsong and Darlene Check. But that connection came through a tragedy. Tim was out fishing when their boat sank, and he was in the ocean for many hours. His youngest brother and brother-in-law drowned alongside him.
But I was crying out, and I was singing the song, Shout to the Lord, and I sang it for maybe over 3 or 4 hours, just continually. Let every breath, everything that I have, never cease to worship you. I was screaming out to God.
After he was rescued, and Darlene Check heard how God had used her song, and she made a point of meeting up with Tim.
And Darlene said, well, yeah, let's plan. Let's not just dream, but we plan, and we made a date and a time for World of Worship. And I think the first year we had maybe over 200 volunteers. So many of those people who weren't working with the Lord that time and came and served with us and served alongside of us, they now become Christians. One of them is my son-in-law, who is now my associate pastor.
In February 2005, Tim and Di moved to Perth, where they are now senior pastors of Eagle Rock Community Church in the city of Gosnells, which has become a hub for people from remote communities all over Western Australia. It isn't a large church, but it has a Bible college and a school for at-risk children, and is planning a new church in Tamworth. Its members are involved in feeding the needy every week, ministering in prisons, hospitals and hostels, holding missions across the nation and overseas, and developing their own businesses. But most of all, it's a community of worship and prayer.
The chains of sin and set me free.
You'll answer your prayers. You know, God will answer, will meet your needs.
On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame.
That a fool says in his heart, listen, there's no God. In other words, I will be the one who will do this myself.